Third Amendment order arrived on my desks. The same morning the beacon relay from outer Verath went silent. I did not consider this a coincidence. In 31 years as a chart-warden for the Verath Compacts Survey Division, I had learned that the corridor did not deal in coincidence. It dealt in sequences. Orderly, patient, final sequences. And if you were paying attention, you could watch them unfold like a tide chart, each step inevitable, each silence louder than the one before. The amendment order was bureaucratic language for a simple fact. We were moving the boundary again, deeper inward, away from human space. I set the order beside my instruments and did not reach for either immediately. Through the vault's narrow observation port, the archive station's running lights reflected off the gas body we orbited, a cold amber smear across the black, and I sat with the silence a moment before I began. It is a habit I developed after the first passage. Some silences deserve to be acknowledged before you fill them with work. The Verath corridor had been a transit lane once. 40 years ago, before my appointment, it had appeared on compact charts as a standard deep space passage, monitored, buoyed, rated for commercial freight. The notation in the margin of those old charts read approaches human space. Standard caution advised. Standard caution. I have looked at those old charts many times. I have tried to imagine what the cartographer who wrote that notation was thinking. I believe he was not thinking very hard. The first passage fleet was 12 vessels. A survey and assertion mission. Compact doctrine when a transit lane showed irregular beacon gaps. Irregular beacon gaps were not unusual. Equipment aged, drift occurred. 12 vessels was a reasonable response to irregular beacon gaps. None returned. The compact's initial assessment was equipment failure, on a systemic scale, possibly a navigational anomaly in the outer reaches. I was a junior warden then, not yet cleared for the incident files. What I knew was what everyone knew. 12 ships had gone in, and the beacons had gone quiet one at a time, in sequence, moving from the outer markers inward, spaced at intervals so regular they might have been scheduled. The last beacon transmission contained no distress signal, no collision alarm, no drive failure notice. It contained sensor readings, routine sensor readings, as if the crew were simply making their log entry, unaware that it would be the last one anyone outside ever received. The compact redrew the boundary after the first passage. They the light minutes outward and added new notation to the margin, which is human space. Do not enter without compact military authorization. They sent the second passage fleet 9 years later, 30 vessels. Military authorization, full survey mandate, orders to proceed to the point of last contact and establish what had occurred. The second passage fleet was commanded by Sector Admiral Dreveth Korn, who had testified before the Compact Council that the first passage loss was an anomaly, statistically improbable to repeat, and that 12 vessels had been insufficient for a proper navigational survey of a corridor that size. He was not wrong about the 12 vessels being insufficient. He was wrong about everything else. 22 of his 30 ships made it past the outer marker before the beacons began going dark. The sequence was the same as the first passage, outer to inner steady intervals, no distress calls. 8 ships turned back before they reached the point of last contact. Those 8 ships returned. Their sensor logs showed nothing. No debris, no drive signatures, no energy discharge consistent with weapons fire. The corridor ahead of them had simply become quieter as they advanced. And at a certain point, the 8 commanders had looked at their instruments, looked at the silence on the other side of their hulls, and made the decision that their careers and their court-martials were worth less than what lay ahead. The compact redrew the boundary again, moved it 1 full light hour outward this time. The new margin notation read, approaches human space, navigation prohibited. Compact Authority 7 seal restriction. Sector Admiral Korn was not court-martialed. He was retired, with full honors, and never spoke publicly about the Verath corridor again. I saw him once at a survey division convocation, 7 years after the second passage. I was a senior warden by then. He was old and small in his decorated coat, standing near the archive displays, and someone introduced me as the warden responsible for the corridor charts. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Redraw it again when the time comes," and he walked away. I understood what he meant only later. The time came with the third passage fleet. I should not have been given access to the final beacon data from the third passage. I am still not certain why I was. The authorization came through Survey Division channels with no attached explanation, and when I queried the issuing officer, I received no reply. I believe someone decided that the chart-warden responsible for the boundary amendments ought to understand what he was amending away from. I believe they were right to decide that. Even if the decision cost me something, I will not easily name. The third passage fleet was 41 vessels, the largest punitive expedition the Compact had ever assembled for a non-declared war deployment. The Compact Council's mandate was explicit: proceed to the inner corridor, establish the cause of the previous losses, and if hostile action by any party was confirmed, respond with appropriate force. 41 ships. The Council called it sufficient. Several senior officers on record called it overwhelming. The word they used in the mission briefing documents I later read was overwhelming. I have spent considerable time with that word since. The outer marker beacons recorded the fleet's entry in good order. 41 drive signatures, nation tight, all systems nominal. The beacons reported at standard intervals for the first 6 hours. Then the sequence began. It was slower this time. That is what I was not prepared for. In the first and second passages, the beacon silence had moved inward at a pace that suggested something covering distance. This time it moved inward at a pace that suggested something that was not in any hurry at all. Beacon outer 7 went silent. 40 minutes later, beacon outer 6, then outer 5, then 4. Each one going dark at the same interval, steady as a metronome, as if whatever was occurring had set a rhythm for itself and saw no reason to deviate from it. 14 beacons went dark before the sequence reached the last active one. That final beacon's transmission ran for 11 seconds before it cut. I have listened to those 11 seconds more times than I will admit to anyone. There is no weapons discharge in the audio. There is no impact. There is no alarm, no voice, no emergency protocol activation. What there is in the last 4 seconds of the recording is a change in the background sensor tone. The specific frequency shift that occurs when a very large number of drive signatures powers down simultaneously, not catastrophic failure, not explosion shutdown, coordinated, simultaneous shutdown of what the beacon's passive array calculated as between 30 and 40 drive sources. Then the beacon went dark too. I sat in this vault for 3 days after I finished listening to those 11 seconds. I ate what my apprentice brought me, and I did not speak, and I worked on the amendment. I worked very carefully, because I understood by then that the chart I was drawing would be the one that stood. There would not be a fourth passage. The Compact Council had already voted quietly, and without public record, to designate the Verath corridor a permanent navigation exclusion zone. They did not ask me what I had heard in the beacon data. I believe they did not want to know. The boundary I drew moved the restriction line 2 full light hours outward from the previous one. I extended the exclusion arc 12 degrees along the galactic plane axis to account for the outer beacon positions. I used the Survey Division's heaviest seal grade on the amendment. When the chart was complete, I looked at it for a long time. Where the Verath corridor had been, there was now a blank space. Not a notation, not a warning. Just the absence of markings, which on a compact navigation chart means the same thing it has always meant. Do not go there, and do not ask why. Because the chart itself is the answer. My apprentice, young, 3rd year, enough to notice things she was not supposed to notice, came in while I was preparing the amendment for filing. She stood at my shoulder and looked at the chart. I could feel her looking at the blank space where the corridor had been. She asked me what was inside it now. I filed the amendment. I capped my instruments. I put on my coat. I have not answered her. I do not intend to.